Hi everyone, welcome to Public Forum Debate Academy. Here we are going to cover the new January topic on decriminalizing drugs. But first, we have free coaching and practice debates available. First, you have to be a team without a public forum debate coach. You can have a speech and debate advisor, but your team has to be primarily student run in order to participate in this free coaching and these free practice debates. And B, you have to compete in at least two or more January topics. There are a few benefits to free coaching and practice debates. A, we can share evidence and rebuttal files when we debate together. B, we have practice debates. Those are always helpful in preparing for your speeches. And finally, there's a Google form in the description if you're interested in signing up. That being said, the new public forum debate topic is on U.S. drug policy, and it's for the January month. And resolved, it says the United States federal government should legalize all illicit drugs. So let's get started with a definition. According to Greenwald in 2009, there's a definition by Portugal, and that statute used decriminalization, which was applied to the purchase, possession, and consumption of all drugs for personal use. Drug usage and possession remain prohibitive, i.e. illegal, and subject to police intervention. However, decriminalization means that infractions have been removed completely. People are treated and processed in a non-criminal proceeding. It's important to distinguish between decriminalization enacted by Portugal and mere depenalization. Depenalization generally signifies the elimination of custodial penalties. However, decriminalization means that either only non-criminal sanctions like fines and treatments requirements are imposed or that no penal sanctions can be enacted. No EU state other than Portugal has explicitly declared drugs to be decriminalized. So let's move to pro-arguments now that we have the definitions covered. The first pro-argument that a team can run is addiction treatment. According to the Newport Institute in 2021, Portugal became the first country in the world in 2001 to decriminalize the acquisition, possession, and use of small quantities of all illicit drugs. Drug overdose deaths declined after decriminalization, and drug usage did not go up. Prison overcrowding decreased. Finally, the number of people in drug treatment increased by over 20% in the first 7 years after drug legalization in Portugal and has held steadily since. You can use the impact of saving lives when you legalize drugs. The second argument that the pro team can run is discrimination. According to Bassett in 2020, who is the director of Health and Human Rights at Harvard University, Oregon quietly made history with the passage of a ballot known as Measure 110, which decriminalizes the personal possession of all drugs while increasing funding for life-saving health and harm reduction services. Punishment field harms by driving substance use underground make it more likely that people overdose, particularly for low-income people and those struggling with lack of housing. In fact, Bassett continues, finding that criminalization of drug use is racist in its intention. When President Nixon declared that his administration would wage a war on drugs over 50 years ago, he did so under the guise of protecting public health. Testimony from one of his top advisors proved that this public reasoning was a ruse. Disrupting black communities was the drug war's paramount purpose. In 2019, there were over 400,000 arrests of black people in the United States for drug law violations, the vast majority of which were for drug possession. Black people make up over a quarter of the people arrested for drug law violations last year, despite making up just 13.4% of the US population. The specter of drugs is used as a justification for authorities to harass, arrest, incarcerate, deport, and in some cases to kill. For example, the world watched in horror as George Floyd drew his last breaths while a police officer taunted, "This is why you don't do drugs, kids." Under a pro world, you would legalize drugs and these harms would be mitigated. Another empiric or examples that the pro can use is in Portugal. According to the Drug Policy Alliance in 2021, there were immense benefits when Portugal decriminalized all drugs. Portugal's drug rates remain below the European average and far lower than rates of drug use in the United States. Between 1998 and 2011, the number of people in drug treatment increased, HIV diagnosis dropped dramatically, AIDS cases decreased, overdose fatalities dropped from 80 in 2001 to 16 in 2012, the number of people arrested declined by over 60%, and people behind bars decreased from 44% to 24%. There are obviously immense benefits at least in Portugal, when they decriminalized drugs. Now we can look to the con side of arguments. The first one being the opioid crisis. According to Lopez 2019 in an article on Vox, the opioid epidemic has proved to that author that decriminalizing drugs is a bad idea. When the government became more lax to opioids, it harmed people. In fact, look to the article itself. The federal government pushed doctors to prescribe opioids in the 1990s and 2000s as drug companies misleadingly marketed opioids. While Purdue Pharma was eventually fined for their horrible misleading marketing for OxyContin, the hundreds of millions of people in fines added up to peanuts compared to the tens of billions of dollars it reaped from the drug. In fact, Lopez continues, finding that the opioid epidemic is deadlier than any other drug crisis in U.S. history. Over 560,000 people in the U.S. died to drug overdoses between 1999 and 2015. The source of the epidemic, what people got started on to higher drugs, was opioid painkillers, and legal painkillers were still linked to most opioid overdose deaths as of 2015. Companies got hold of dangerous, addictive products, marketed irresponsibly, and lobbied for lax rules, and the government's lax regulatory response was floundered. The government even got people addicted, and those people died. So it's clear that when the government becomes lax on drug enforcement, people die. Another argument the con can make is economic costs. According to the Recovery Research Institute, any potential tax revenue gains from sales can be offset by economic losses related to lower workforce productivity, e.g., more people taking days off to work to recover from the effects of drug use, as well as health care costs. Economic costs due to law enforcement and criminal justice could also contribute to economic burden due to violations of the laws accompanying legalization, e.g., drugged driving conditions, sales to minors, etc. And another argument that the con can make is psychoactive drugs. The Research Recovery Institute continues, finding that psychoactive drugs, including marijuana, do cause acute psychological impairments. The increased accessibility, destigmatization, and decreased price would result in more users and therefore more potential hazards and harms in the population. Thank you for watching. Please consider sharing this video with other debaters and consider subscribing to stay updated on our videos.